to the station, he knew what he was going to have to do. It was a shame, too, he thought. Damned bad luck. The person in the seat next to him could just as easily have been a man, or even an older woman. Somebody with more experience in life would be able to take it better. He felt the gun in his left coat pocket. It was small and hard, and it felt good. Anyway, it was all he had now. The girl beside him turned slightly and looked out of the window. Blue eyes, he noted. A real innocent-looking doll. And that blonde hair looked like the real thing. He tried to see if she had a ring on her finger, but her hand was under the book she was reading. He hoped she wasn't married. That way, if there was real trouble, at least there wouldn't be kids left behind to miss her. But somebody would miss her all right. This was a real classy little girl. She looked on the sensible side too, not that kind that scared easily. Still, a man would have made it a lot simpler. He looked at his watch. 16 more minutes if the train was on time. A pretty tight spot. The cops would be waiting at the station, probably 4 to a car, 2 at each end. They would let the passengers off, but they would nab him when he stepped onto the platform. That's where you come in, miss, he thought. You can tell the cops I'm set to blow your pretty brains out if they lay a hand on me. Then we'll just walk, not run, to the car. Joe had better be waiting with that car, he thought. If he isn't, we'll get a taxi. The cops aren't going to make a move. Not so long as you stay close to me. Just walk quietly, miss, and we might make it. We might not, too. I sure would hate to have to do it, he thought. He'd killed one man on this job already, and that's how he got into this jam. He didn't really consider himself to be a murderer. The guy had just got in his way when he was coming out of the bank with the money, and there wasn't a thing else to do. The poor dope standing there in the vestibule. It looked for a minute like he was going to try to be a hero. So he had to do it. Then he got the side door closed and got lost in the crowd. He'd played hide and seek with the cops for a couple of hours. Then he got on this train. It would have been okay if he hadn't grabbed this seat by the window. Well, it was the only seat left. And then this girl came along at the next station and sat down beside him. He'd turned his head so she wouldn't get a good look at him. And there was this cop standing there, looking in just as the train was pulling out. The cop's head jerked up as soon as he saw him, and then the cop was reaching for his gun or his whistle, but by then the train was rolling and it was too late. Too late, but just in time. They'll all be waiting at the next stop. Well, we've got 12 minutes now, he thought. I'll write the note and give it to her in a few minutes. I don't want to have her think things over too long. She looked pretty smart. Anyway, she's a reader. Only taken her nose out of that book once since she sat down. Do you have a pencil, miss? He said aloud. The girl looked up, but she was startled. I think I do, she said. She fished in her pocketbook and handed him a slim gold pen. He said thank you and took out an envelope and began to write. No need to get alarmed. Just do what this note says to do and nobody gets hurt, especially not you. This is the act. I'm carrying a gun, and when we get to the next station, I'm to have to hold it on you while we walk out of the car. There's going to be some cops waiting, and we're going to have to tell them hands off or you get hurt. I'll do the talking. All you have to do is don't scream and tell the cops I mean business. He looked at the last word and decided something was wrong with it. Miss, he said. How do you spell business? She spelled the word for him. He corrected it and handed her the pencil. When she had put the pencil in her pocketbook and was reading again, he shoved the note across the page of her book. She kept her head down a long time. She's a calm one, he thought, and she was. When she looked at him, she met his eyes and held them so long, he looked away first. Maybe she doesn't believe it, he thought. She was still looking at him, so he reached in his left coat pocket and showed her the gun. Still, she didn't look startled. Good for you, miss. Maybe we'll make it after all, he thought, as the girl went back to her book. He looked at her sitting there with her head down. She was so calm, he thought. Maybe she'd know the score. He had to see that she kept her mind on them. Good book, eh, miss? Yes, she said, looking at him. It's a mystery story. One of the things with a trick ending. I finished it, she said. The sun was streaming into the window and throwing glints on her blonde hair and in her eyes. Do you mind pulling the shade down? She asked. He turned and wrestled with the shade a moment, and when he turned back, she handed him the book. You might want to read the trick ending, she said. He looked down at the book. It was a bunch of short stories. He quickly read enough to get the idea of the story she had been reading. It was about a murderer who was on the train and was about to pull a gun on the passenger next to him when he discovered that his gun was missing. The story was called The Murderer and the Pickpocket. That's one of those endings that are supposed to take you by surprise, the girl said. But I could see it coming all the time. Couldn't you? He looked up from the book and saw that the gun she was holding on him was his gun. She still looked cool and innocent, and he could tell that his hunch about her had been right. She wasn't the kind that would scare easily.